Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's going to be comparing the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon Xtreme Recon package to the Ford Bronco Sasquatch package to see which is the cooler off-road package. Before we get in this video though, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to the large mailer Ford Lincoln here in Provo, Utah for giving me some time with this Bronco. I'm going to include a link to their inventory in the description down below so you can check out what they have currently. And then on a side note, if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. Let's get into it. Starting things off with the Jeep Wrangler, there are a lot of different powertrains you can get with the Xtreme Recon package. You can get this 6.4 liter Hemi V8 with 470 horsepower and then 470 pound-feet of torque. You can also get a 3.6 liter V6 with about 285 horsepower, a 2 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder with about 270 horsepower, and then for the 2024 model year, they're actually changing the Xtreme Recon to the X package, I believe is what it's called, and you can get that on the new 4xe, which is a 2 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder with a hybrid assist. So you've got 4 different powertrain options to get with this package, which is pretty crazy. Now the Bronco makes things a lot simpler. There's 2 different powertrain options available on the Bronco, period, and you can get the Sasquatch package with both powertrain, at least to my knowledge. So the 2.7 liter turbocharged V6, which this Bronco happens to have, it's about 330 horsepower and then about 415 pound-feet of torque. And then you can also get a 2.3 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder with about 300 horsepower and then 325 pound-feet of torque. Now when it comes to transmissions, with the Wrangler you've got an 8-speed automatic, and then with the Bronco you've got a 10-speed automatic transmission. And then axle ratios, that's also important. So with the Xtreme Recon package, 4.56 axle ratio, and from what I've read, it looks like the X package is going to have pretty much the same axle ratio. With the Bronco, 4.7 axle ratio. Now before we move on to the next part of the video, I do want to mention, if you want to see more videos just like this, then I recommend you subscribe because I post content every single day. Now the next thing that's very important for these packages is ground clearance. So with this Xtreme Recon package, we have 12.9 inches of ground clearance. And I mean, you guys can see everything here with the Wrangler definitely sitting high to achieve that. Now with the Sasquatch package, you've got about 11.5 inches of ground clearance. And I mean, you can see that although the Bronco, and I'll show you guys a clip in a second, sits a little bit higher than the Wrangler in terms of like the roof line height, you can see underneath things do sit a little bit lower. And then here's that shot with both of them together. You can see the Bronco roof is slightly higher than the Wrangler roof, which is funny because you'd think that it would have more ground clearance, but in fact the Wrangler actually has more ground clearance. Now something to note that's very important for off-roaders is going to be their bumpers, and both of these, as you can see, have these upgraded bumpers, which can obviously take a hit. They also have recovery points on them as well. Now with the Wrangler's Xtreme Recon package, we've got 17-inch wheels and then 35s in the front and over in the rear. And like I said, that X package for 2024, it looks like it's basically just going to be the Xtreme Recon package, just under a different name. And then you also get these little like fender flare extensions here. You got rock rails and everything, and then here's kind of like your full side view so you guys can see the stance of the Xtreme Recon. Now with the Bronco, it also provides 17-inch wheels and 35s in the front and in the rear. You guys can see a different tire brand, but still 35s nonetheless. And then look at the fender flares here. You got the larger fender flares. Now this one actually doesn't have rock rails, which is pretty interesting, but you can get those on the Broncos. And then here's your stance there with the side of the Bronco. Now the next thing that's really important is axles. The Wrangler has a solid front axle, whereas the Bronco has independent front suspension. And then in the rear, the Wrangler has a solid rear axle, and the Bronco also has a solid rear axle. Now with all of the Xtreme Recon Wranglers, you get these Mopar shocks. They're not the worst shocks on the planet, but they're also not great. This is one of the downsides about the Xtreme Recon is the second you buy one, you instantly want to trade out the shocks. Now with the Bronco Sasquatch, you actually have 2 different shock options. Now this one is a Wild Trax. You've got Fox shocks, and these are really solid. We'll kind of talk about it more with driving, but most Bronco Sasquatches will have the Bilstein position sensitive shocks. Those shocks are yellow in coloration. And then when it comes to off-road tech, you guys can see you've got front and rear lockers with this Xtreme Recon Rubicon. You have your off-road plus, you've got your sway bar disconnect. We've got our 2-speed transfer case, like I said, 8-speed automatic with manual shift. And this also has cool stuff like off-road cruise control as well. And since we're on the topic of off-road tech, you guys can see with the Wrangler, it has a front camera and a backup camera. Now with the Bronco, you guys can see we've got our off-road cruise control. We have our driveline select. This actually has two-wheel drive. That Wrangler does not because it's a 392. But if you get a Wrangler Rubicon with the V6 or with the 2.0 turbo, you will have two-wheel drive just like this. And it's like four-wheel auto, all that fun stuff. And then we've got front and rear lockers with this trail turn assist. And then if you get the Badlands package, you also will have a stabilizer bar disconnect. That Badlands would be most similar to a Rubicon. And then with this one, you have just a backup camera, but you can also get a full 360 camera system. So the camera system in the Bronco definitely better than what you have in the Wrangler is what I would say. Now, when it comes to pricing, both packages cost about $4,000 on top of the vehicle that you're already purchasing if the package is not already standard. Like with a Wild Track, it's standard equipment to be a Sasquatch, for example. So we're going to start off in the Wrangler. Now, this is obviously not an engine comparison. This is a suspension slash, lifted, SUV comparison, if that makes sense. We're going to be focusing... Okay, I got to turn this down, sorry. We're just gonna set that down there. Okay, so I won't die of heat, but it won't be like super loud with the fan. Anyways, I want to focus on the suspension, the tires, and the wheels and everything with this comparison, and not on the powertrains. Because again, I'm trying to help you guys figure out if you should go Xtreme Recon or if you should go Sasquatch package. So first off, with the Xtreme Recon, it does make the Wrangler squishier. These shocks are like all over the place, and Wranglers are already all over the place because you have solid axles. Now the next thing is, having more sidewall with the tires, that also like adds to the squishiness, so to say. So it's kind of like it's a double thing. Now the steering's pretty vague on the Wranglers, and the Xtreme Recon kind of accentuates that because you've got bigger tires, you've got bigger lift, right? That's just what happens when you go up. Now when it comes to acceleration, obviously this is a 392. So the acceleration is going to be crazy, and not just partial throttle. The acceleration is going to be crazy, but I want to focus on the axle ratio. I've driven a 2.0 turbo Xtreme Recon. I've driven a 3.6 liter V6, and I can confidently tell you that, sorry, I apparently got something in my throat. I can confidently tell you that with the upgraded axle ratio, the 4.56, it helps out immensely with moving the larger tires. Because if you take a regular Rubicon with a 410, and then you just have it try to move 35s, it can move them. But 4.56, it's way more comfortable. It has like like look at this, just kind of, it's got just more of like a punch off of the right off the bat. So something's up with the driving of the Xtreme Recon. Suspension's kind of squishy, wallowy, all over the place. That's just kind of what Wranglers are also known for. On top of the suspension being pretty squishy, the tires help out. And so if you're looking for like, I guess, a more comfortable ride from a Wrangler, the Xtreme Recon does that, but also understand that it also leads to worse driving dynamics. The steering is more vague, and it's more wallowy all over the place. So like when you're on the highway, you really got to pay attention with this. That is for sure. But let's pop in the Bronco. Well, setting off in the Wild Track, and I can tell you, it is a night and day difference, like going from a Wrangler to a Bronco. So first off, with the Bronco, this one actually happens to have the top insulation here with the hard top. It's a lot quieter in here. It feels more car-like versus with the Wrangler, you hear quite a bit more noise. Again, mine has the hard top, mine has the top insulation, and you still get a more insulated cabin experience here with the Bronco compared to the Wrangler. Now the next big difference is steering. Having independent front suspension means that the steering's way more direct in this. Now you actually do get a little bit of vagueness, and it's noticeable with these 35s compared to the smaller tires you can get on the Bronco. You can get 33s on like a Badlands. I just drove one of those, and you can get even smaller tires on like the base model. But the point that I'm trying to make here is, even though this is like a vaguer version of Bronco steering, it's still way more direct feeling than what you have with the Wrangler, that is for sure. And so like the daily drivability of a Bronco with 35s versus a Wrangler is completely different. This, you can be, there's more forgiveness with this setup because it's not tracking all over the place as much, and the steering's in all over the place as much as what you have in the Wrangler. Now when it comes to ride quality, honestly, they're both really good. What I do want to mention though is, since the Wrangler has a solid front axle, it does kind of feel harsher over bigger bumps, because with this, when you go over bigger bumps, basically what happens, hocus pocus, Ford Focus, almost like ran into those people. When you go over like bigger bumps, the independent suspension, right, it isolates what's happening. Whereas with the solid front axle, you don't get that. And then when it comes to shove, the 4.7 helps out immensely. It feels really good. A Bronco without the 4.7 versus a Bronco with the 4.7, it's a pretty substantial difference in terms of like the, you know, right off the line punch, basically. But yeah, this right here, the handling's so much better. So like this is just a lot more daily drivable. I love my Wrangler, but I understand the downsides to the Wrangler, I suppose. So to quickly sum things up, and I guess we'll do the same little punch test here, but it's gonna be like a naturally aspirated engine versus turbo engine. Yeah, you've got to, the turbos aren't spooled up, so it's not gonna like punch the same way as the Wrangler, but you can still feel like the axle, like there's just more right off the bat. And like parking this is, yeah, I feel like the turning's just better overall. So here's what I have to say is, obviously from an off-road perspective, the solid axles and the extra ground clearance of the Wrangler is going to make it better off-road compared to the Bronco. There's no, like, it doesn't matter if you're a Ford fan or a Jeep fan, numbers don't lie, right? Ground clearance plus solid axle, more ground clearance plus solid axle equals better off-road capability. But when it comes to on-road driving, this is a lot more, like the manners are a lot better on road. And so if you just want the cool look, right, this is going to give you a better on-road driving experience. Whereas if you want the capabilities, right, that's gonna give you better capabilities. But let me know if you do Sasquatch or Xtreme Recon.